There's a surprising amount of diversity in Gills Creek. Gills Creek is thought to be the most polluted urban creek in South Carolina. It has high levels of bacteria, low dissolved oxygen, which is what fish and other aquatic organisms need to survive. Of course, after the 2015 flood in October, we realized that Gills Creek also had a serious flooding issue. And many of these issues, water quality issues and the flooding issues, can be traced back to land uses upstream in the watershed. Much of the Gills Creek watershed is developed, which means there's a lot of impervious surfaces, things like parking lots and rooftops that don't allow rainwater to soak into the ground like it would in a natural setting. Instead, that water is going to rush off those surfaces and enter the nearest stream or creek, and if you're in Gills Creek watershed, that water is all going to end up in Gills Creek. So what we saw during the 2015 flood was a large amount of rain, over 16 inches in a 24-hour period. All of that water came sloshing into Gills Creek and of course caused a lot of devastation downstream. Where we're standing right now, the floodwaters would have been well over our head and almost touching the top of that bridge behind us here at Rosewood.
I've been fishing down here about 25, 30 years and come down here, I enjoy fishing down here. Peaceful. When the flood, we had the flood, and then there was a little bit better fishing down here.
Better fishing after the flood?
Yeah. A lot of more fish came in.
Yeah.
Because of the flood.
And what do you do with them typically whenever you catch them?
Well, I eat some of them, some of them I give away.
Okay.
I'm Virginia Shervette from the University of South Carolina, where I'm a professor and have the Fisheries Conservation Research Lab. And a lot of what my lab does relates to studying fishery species, which are any fish or even invertebrate species that are targeted for consumption either recreationally or commercially. In freshwater systems, that means that we're studying mostly recreational species. And here at Gills Creek, we get a whole lot of sunfish species. So that would be bluegill, it's what everybody calls brim. So bluegill, red-breast sunfish, today we got a spotted sunfish. It also includes crappie and bass, largemouth bass. So what we're doing here today, and what we've been doing over the past year, is sampling for all those species that people tend to come out here and fish to eat, and testing them to see what levels of mercury we find in their muscle tissue, which is what people would eat when they're eating them. We also determine what the sex of each fish is, and we also age the fish. So we age the fish so that we can look at the bioaccumulation rate of contaminants like mercury. And so we're able to understand in a more complete manner what's happening with mercury once it gets into the fish and if it increases as they get larger and older. So right now we are sampling several sites in the Gills Creek watershed, and we're trying to make sure that the amount of mercury that occurs in the fish that are of edible size is relatively low, because that work hasn't really been done in the Gills Creek watershed for a while. The South Carolina DHEC tests regularly all up and down Broad River and Congaree, and so we wanted to compare what we're seeing in the same species with what DHEC reports for the Congaree River and the Broad River. So the reason why we're interested in understanding what's happening with mercury in the fishes that people eat is because too much exposure to mercury can result in very negative health impacts. So what we found so far in Gills Creek watershed is very, very similar to what DHEC has reported, South Carolina DHEC has reported on its website for the Broad and Congaree system. And so overall, within all the sites that we sample, mercury levels tend to be pretty low. For all of the brim type species, so bluegill, redbreast, even in some of the smaller crappie individuals, the only species that we've collected that has a somewhat high level, and it's still not high enough that you couldn't eat it once a week and be okay, is largemouth bass. And that is basically what DHEC recommends as well for the Congaree River around this area, and for the Broad River.